Okay, so here we are at karaokeversion.com again. If you'd like to know how to get to this website, how to start an account, how to find the tracks that you need and purchase them, that's all in an earlier video that you can reference. So we've done the part where we did the quick and easy backing track, where we just kind of mixed it here on the website, downloaded it as we wanted it, and it's ready for use in a practice setting, or if you like the mixes that you got, you can use that in a show. So this one is a little bit more in depth. So I will be showing you how to mix a version with no clicks to it other than the intro clicks, and then we're going to use a different type of software to manipulate the song and the click tracks a little bit more so that they're more musician friendly and easier to play along to in both the rehearsal room and for shows. So for this one, you'll want to leave everything center mixed. If you recall, on the easy mix that we did, we put the click track on the right and we send everything else to the left channel. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a mix without a click other than intro clicks. Intro clicks, I highly recommend that you include those on everything you download, unless there's a good reason not to, because it just makes everything easier to line up when you put it into your audio software, whatever that may be. So we are going to do a mix with no click. Let's do a mix for a band that has, say, drums and bass and guitar. So, oh, and of course vocals. So we'll take out the vocals right away, because if there's two vocalists, they can handle lead and backing. We're going to take out the guitar. Actually, let's leave one guitar in, assuming there's one guitarist in the band. So we messed around earlier with how you can isolate these tracks by hitting the solo button and listen to them a little bit one at a time. So that was electric guitar left. Here's electric guitar general. I'm guessing that your guitar player is going to want the shredding part. So we're going to unsolo that. We're going to get rid of the electric guitar, the general one, because that's the more fun one to play. We're going to leave the rhythm electric guitar guitar left. We're going to leave that in there, but we're going to pull the volume back to, say, about 70%. Our band has a bass player, so we don't need that. Our band has a drummer, so we don't need that. We'll leave in the percussion, we'll leave in the organ, and we'll leave in that slightly reduced volume rhythm guitar. So now we've got a mix that we can use to create a more in-depth backing track. So that is what's coming next. Let's go ahead and download this first. So I like to open a bunch of windows so that I know where I'm putting stuff. So I like to put downloads in the corner. I like to put my audio folder up in the corner. And I like to have the website on the right-hand side of the screen. This is all Windows 10, Windows 7. They'll let you snap windows like this. I don't know if other operating systems have that option, so do whatever's best for you, but this way I can see everything at once. So we're going to download this. And once it's downloaded, as it's downloading, it'll appear in your download window. So I like to just get ready to name it right away. Okay, so I'm just going to name this LIOL, Live It Out Loud, Queen of the Night. Practice track, we'll say. And then we'll just move that. I like to have a folder ready where there's rough mixes with no click, which is what I would call this. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there. And it's important that once you download it, put it in a folder where it's going to stay, because once you start using your audio software to manipulate this stuff, it gets confused if you keep moving the file to different locations. If you have it in one location when you open the file in your audio software the first time, and then you move it, and then you try to open up your audio software to do some further editing, it'll tell you it can't find the file because now it's in a different place. So make sure that you pick up a spot ahead of time where you know you can keep that track, and that way your audio software can find it every time you load up the the file. So in addition to this practice track, we also want to download just a click track, which I've already done. So I have a separate folder for click tracks, and there's Queen of the Night. As you can see, I like to label things pretty precisely, including beats per minute. For click tracks, that's all I put, but for if I'm downloading mixes such as the one we just did, if I'm naming them a little bit more meticulously for myself, I usually put the key and the the tempo. And I also like to include information such as whether there are backing vocals or not, things of that nature. So that way, when I'm looking at a file name, I immediately know, is this the one I need? So right now, we've got our practice track downloaded. We've got our click track downloaded. So now we're going to go over to the audio software portion and see how to basically put these things together and create a usable track. All right. So now we get to the more intricate part, if you prefer to make your tracks a little bit more musician friendly, if not just drummer friendly. So I'm using Studio One Professional by PreSonus. I really like the software. It does everything I need. Some people use Pro Tools. There's all sorts of different versions of software out there. You can pick the one that's best for you, but the process will generally be the same. So once you have Studio One or whatever software you're using, once you have it loaded, you can create a new song, and I usually try to give it a prefix based on the band I'm making it for. I do backing tracks for a ton of bands, and so to keep track of things better, for instance, Live It Out Loud, I'll put LIOL. And then this is going to be Queen of the Night that we've been working with so far. I like to also put in the key and the tempo because I would like to know what I'm working with just at a glance at a file. So then once you have that, you can choose where to store it. Like, they're automatically going to give you a default of somewhere on your computer's internal hard drive. If you only do a couple of these, that's probably just fine. But I've done hundreds of backing tracks, and I don't want my computer bogged down with that much memory being taken up with files. So I always find, say, an external hard drive, something like that, to go and save things in. I have a separate folder for Studio One 3, and we'll just call this LIOL, and then you could save it there. And there's all sorts of little options they give you before you actually create a track. A lot of the time they'll have some of these boxes checked. Right now, I've configured it to where I want it to be, which is not to stretch the audio files to song tempo, because basically you would have to know the exact tempo of your song and put it in here, and sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. And if you're off, basically the software will try to make a constant song tempo for you that may be wrong. So I just turn that off so that everything stays the tempo that it was downloaded at, and I don't need to worry about things being faster or slower once they're input into the software. So that's the process here, and then once you're ready, you hit OK. I have actually gone ahead and made a file for this already, so I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to open the file that I had already started, and I'm going to show you how I got this far. So basically, when you first start, all of this is going to be empty. So what you want to do is, to create a track, you're going to hit this little plus sign here, and you can name your track whatever you want, and enter, and there's your proudly named track. And then once you have the track name and you're ready to go, make sure that it's highlighted so that whatever you're about to import will go to that spot. So you could go to Song, Import File, and then you go to wherever on your computer you've hidden the stuff that you need. So we're going to go back to the folder where we put the Queen of the Night practice track. So that's going to be in backing tracks, and there it is. There's our Queen of the Night that we had downloaded before. And there it is. And so this is a good example of why you want to keep those intro clicks on there. You notice everything, I had set everything so that it starts at the beginning of the timeline. When you move things around and shift things around, the best thing to do is just move things together if you want them to stay locked up. So There's all sorts of little shortcuts in software like this. If you hold down the control key as you click, I'm sorry, in this program it's shift actually, shift and click, you can highlight multiples. You could also, if you wanted to, just hit Control A, and that automatically selects all your files for you. So in this case, what I want to do, I want to create an intro click for the drummer that's 8 clicks long, so that the drummer will have 4 clicks to get used to the tempo, and then 4 clicks to count everybody in. And so I'm going to slide everything over about 5 seconds. And at this point, because I had already downloaded everything that I wanted, or imported everything that I wanted rather before, I'm going to go ahead and delete the track we just made. So you can do that by right-clicking on there and just hitting remove track. You can also, you see there's a shortcut for that as well. Shift and the T button will make that go away. So we're removing that track. So what I usually do is I make the first track is the rough mix with intro clicks and no other clicks after that. The second track, I create a click track and import the click track that we had downloaded earlier. And then my third track is always a voiceover, because I want to give the drummer a count in, and I want to, if there's any tricky spots coming up, any tricky breaks that I think maybe the drummer would benefit from being reminded of beforehand, I like to put a little voiceover in there to let the drummer know that that's coming. You also want to make sure that the mix is set so that everything goes to the correct speaker, or to the correct side, I guess, if you're using a stereo track. So we want, right now, everything is center mixed. So all this stuff, including voiceover when we do that, is all going to come through both speakers, both left and right channels. So we don't want that. We want, most bands in the Northwest that I've worked with choose to put their click tracks and their voiceovers on the right channel. So we're going to move everything right for the click track and the voiceover. And then they like to put all the music on the left channel. And that isolates these so that everything on the right channel, the voiceover and the click, that's all going to go just to your drummer. So they'll be the only person hearing that. And then the music on the left will go basically to everybody else. Most drummers will set it up, and we'll do a hardware portion of this video in a bit, where we can show you how to assign all this stuff. But most drummers would like to have the click going directly into their mixer so that only they have access to it, only they need to worry about it. Same with the voiceover. And then the music obviously needs to be sent to your band members to be put in their monitors. It needs to be sent to the sound tech in front of house so that people in the audience can hear it. So what the drummer will usually do is kind of use a second input from the DI that the tracks go into to go back into their mixer and give them complete control over their own volume for the volume of the tracks. So that's a little bit complicated. We'll go over that in the hardware portion. Don't worry too much about it right now. Just know that you want the music on the left and all the click track and voiceover intro on the right. And so we got there by using this little mix button down here. You can open and close it just by single click. So I moved everything over to 5 seconds because I want to, this has a 4-click intro, which, you know, if you're playing in a cover band and you want things to move very quickly from one song to the next, 4-click intros are fine if there's no pickup notes for anybody. I like to be a little bit kinder to drummers that maybe haven't worked with click tracks as often. So I like to create an 8-click intro that gives the drummer, as I said before, 4 clicks to get used to the tempo, and then they can count the band in for a full 4 clicks, which most of the time the band is going to find easier to deal with too. Sometimes just getting 3, 4 from the drummer it catches people a little bit off guard. So there's probably a shortcut for this, and I've been too lazy to find it. So what I tend to do, what we're going to do, first of all, on the music track, we're going to end up getting rid of these intro clicks in a moment. So I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But first, we're going to worry about taking these first 4 intro clicks and basically creating 4 more of them so that we get 8 total. So what I like to do is get the cursor as close as I can to the first click, and then going down here, we can start zooming in. And you have to be careful, because if you zoom too far, then the thing you're looking at here, this is the waveform for your click. That basically tells you when the click starts. So if you have your marker too far away from that, This will eventually go off screen, and it's going to be impossible to see what you're doing. So as I expand down here and zoom in, I like to get the cursor closer when I can. And also, I like to move the window so that I have a little bit more room to expand. And then this will probably do it. We'll probably be able to get all the way in. There we go. So this spot right here is pretty much where the waveform for the click begins. So we're going to isolate that first of all. And we're going to go ahead and I use a shortcut that is Alt-X. So make sure that you only have the track highlighted that you actually want to do something to. So up here is the music. We don't want to do anything to that. So we're going to not highlight that. We're going to highlight just the click. And we're going to use Alt-X to chop off the lead in before the click starts. So this right here is empty space. We're going to delete that. So all you have to do is hit the delete key. And there are other ways to do it, but delete is probably the fastest. So we delete that. So now this click track starts right at the spot where the first click begins. So now I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to go. So here's our first click. These are our intro clicks for the drummer. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right before the first click of the actual song, we're going to make another cut. So we're going to get that cursor close again. Give ourselves some room and zoom in. It can take a moment. And again, as it starts to zoom in further and further, you probably want to adjust your cursor just a little bit. So, okay, so we want to get as close as we can to that first click of the song. And once we're there, again, make sure just your click track is highlighted. Hit Alt-X. And so now this portion over here that I'm clicking on here to highlight, this is exactly 4 clicks, the length of 4 clicks. So we want to make a copy of this. So I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to hit copy. There's also Control-C. That's pretty much universal for making a copy. Then we're going to zoom back out so we can see a little bit more. We're going to hit the stop button to put the cursor back at the beginning. And I like to, if you start things right at the very beginning of your timeline, chances are a little bit can get chopped off when you actually play it back from a device. So I like to leave a lead in of 1 second. So I'm going to zoom in until I can see where 1 second is. Oh, by the way, sometimes when you're first setting up this software, your timeline is not set up in seconds. Sometimes it's in samples or bars or frames. So I prefer seconds. It's just the way I think of these things. A lot of the time, the bars don't quite line up unless you do a bunch of intricate stuff that we just really don't need to do. So make sure your timeline is measured in seconds. And then we go to 1 second in. We make sure we're on the click track. And then we can either do right click and paste, or we could do Control-V to paste. But basically, those 4 clicks that we just copied, we're going to paste them right here. So now what I want to do, I want to make sure this is where my clicks are going to start for the drummer. So here's 4 clicks. Now over here, we made some cuts. So it's really easy to accidentally forget to highlight something, and when you start moving things over, something gets left behind, something doesn't move. So like, let's say I had this and this selected, and I decided, okay, I'm going to bring this over. Oh, I just covered up the 4 clicks that I still need to go in between. So a real easy fix for any mistakes you make is just Control-Z. It's undo. Boom, there. Mistake gone. And I need that one a lot. So yeah, I wish my life had a Control-Z. Okay, so we're going to highlight everything by hitting Control-A. That's going to highlight all. So now right now every single track is going to move. You know, if I start to move 1, all the rest are going to follow. So we're actually we want this first 4 click intro, we want that to stay put. So I'm going to hit Shift, and I'm going to click that once, and it deselects that, but the rest of everything else is still highlighted. So I'm going to put my cursor here so I have a good reference point as these things get closer. And we're going to just start moving everything closer. And we're trying to get these 4 clicks to butt right up against these 4 clicks so it's seamless. So now we're going to zoom in. And again, this gets pretty close on the timeline as you zoom in, so you want to make sure you adjust your cursor as you go. And we're going to drag this over a little further, and then zoom some more, and give ourselves a little room by bumping this arrow here. put the cursor over here as well. And, oops, probably a little too far. Let's go back one. There we go. And that's as far as we can zoom. So now we're going to try to get this as close as we can, butting right up against it. That's probably going to work pretty good. So let's go back, zoom back out so we can see more of the track. We're going to hit stop to send us back to the beginning. And we're going to check and see if those clicks are pretty seamless. So here we go with that portion. All right, so that was pretty seamless. So this is pretty much how we want the intro of our song to go, except since this music part of the track, the part with all the backing, guitar and organ and all that, that's going to be playing for everybody. We do not want the audience to hear the clicks, so we're going to go here and basically in between that fourth click and the beginning of the song, we're going to just make a cut. So it doesn't have to be exact, just somewhere between this sound ending and this sound beginning. Make sure that only that track is highlighted, and you hit Alt-X, and we're going to highlight those 4 clicks and just delete them because we don't need them. That would be going through the channel that goes to your bands, to the audience, to everybody. So we don't want clicks on there. So we're going to delete that, and we've already mixed everything right and left, so we're safe there. And that should create for us a track where you only hear the click on the right channel, and then the left channel is going to be all music. So let's see if we did that right. Sounds good to me. Hopefully it sounded good to you. So the other thing I like to do is create a voiceover for the drummer so that they know for sure when they should be counting the band in. So I like to let these first 4 clicks go by just so the drummer can get an idea of the tempo, and over the second 4 clicks, that's when I'm gonna count in. So if you need to do a recording, what you're gonna want to do is, now there's all sorts of ways to record in this software. I mean, right now we're just keeping things super simple, and so I'm going to continue that trend. I'm not going to go into all the options you have for recording things, but if you just want to record on one track, first thing you want to do, actually the first thing you want to do is make sure the volume on your computer has been set to a reasonable level that's not going to create feedback. A lot of the time when I'm recording these tracks, I just use the computer's internal mic, and that's good enough for me. And so I have to keep the volume turned pretty low because that will create a feedback loop pretty quickly if I bring the volume up too much. So for me on a Windows operating system here, I usually have the volume set to a 4. Whatever works for you, just to avoid feeding back. So then you want to arm your track for recording. When you hit this record button, it doesn't start recording. It just makes sure that that track is ready to record. So if you hit this button and then you think, oh, I forgot to do something, no big deal. You can disarm it just by clicking it again, no big deal. So we're going to arm this for recording, and then we are going to hit record down here. That'll start this bar scrolling and the music going, and then when you're ready, you can say whatever into the microphone, and it'll record it for you. So we're going to record a voiceover count in for the drummer. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sounded pretty good to me. Let's play it back and make sure that we got it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta-da! Okay, now we have a voiceover count in for our drummer. I like to clip everything before and after the count in because sometimes it catches breathing and other such things. All right, so now we've got our voiceover chopped down, so hopefully all that's captured is a voiceover. One other thing I like to do for the drummer, we all know sometimes you're getting towards the end of a song and it's kind of like, how long was this chorus again? How many times did we do this again? Do we need 2 times through, 3 times through? Where are we? So it's nice to give the drummer a cue that the end of the track is coming up. So what I like to do And I did not come up with this because I'm not that smart. Some production type friends of mine years ago suggested, well, they basically told me that what they used was turning the last two measures of the song into eighth note clicks rather than quarter note clicks. So everything's still in time, but you notice a change in the click track if you're the drummer, and you realize, we're wrapping it up. I should cue the band with one final fill here. So we're going to turn these last two measures of clicks into twice as fast clicks, eighth notes basically. So it's a little bit like the process we did up front. We're going to zoom in as close as we can to this first click that we want to edit. So zoom all the way in, go in there, and hopefully you remember already your shortcut. First of all, make sure that that track alone is highlighted, and your shortcut is Alt-X. So we've got that. Then we back off, and in this case we want two measures of clicks to be affected, so we're going to go all the way over here to just before the final click of the song. So most tracks are going to, some tracks have a little bit different ending, but most tracks in general, they're going to end on the final beat 1. So we can leave that final beat 1 alone, because once that hits, the song is done. Nobody needs any more timekeeping. So we're going to zoom in real close to that. Oops, one too far. There we go. And we're going to make one more cut there using the Alt-X shortcut. So okay, Alt-X. And now this section right here, this is our two measures of click that we want to speed up. So what you can do in Studio One is you can right click, and it has this little speed up option. And right now it's set to 1.0 so that everything is normal speed. What we want to do, we want to turn those into eighth notes. So we're going to double click that to highlight it. We're going to hit 2 for twice as fast and enter. And you notice when I do that, it disappears here. The reason is it's been shortened to half its original length. It's instead of 2 measures of quarter notes, it's now 1 measure of eighth notes. So all you have to do, you don't even have to go scroll back so you can see it. Just hit the D key on your keyboard. D for duplicate. So D one time, and there it is. So now we can pull back and see, oops, if I know my arrows correctly, we can see that we've got 2 measures worth of eighth note clicks. And here's what that is going to sound like. I think that's going to be pretty obvious to anybody that something's coming up. So there we go. We've just made our track more drummer friendly. So also down here at the bottom of the screen, sometimes you'll see this little red light go on. That means that somewhere along the way we've peaked or we've clipped. We've basically gotten such a hot signal somewhere that it's going to distort and not sound too good. This has happened because right now we still have everything center mixed. So the last thing we're going to do is, first of all, when you click on this red light, it goes off. So then if you needed to, let's say you had everything mixed the way you wanted and it was still turning on, you could click on it to turn it off and kind of check sections of the tune to see where is that happening. But right now we're just turning it off because we should be done with that in a second. So we're going to go to this mix button down here, click that. And this shows you the tracks that you have up above, your voiceover, your click track, and your music track. So again, most bands in the Northwest are going to mix music to the left and click track and voiceover and all that to the right. Make sure you check if you're a drummer and you're subbing for a band, double check, because I've worked for some bands. Actually, I even auditioned for Holland America Cruise Lines, years ago, and turns out they use the reverse. And so since you audition on video, they got to see a drummer fix things on the fly, and I still got hired. Hey, that's nice. So, okay, we're going to mix music to the left and everything else to the right, so only the drummer will be able to hear it. When we get everything routed correctly, we'll go over the hardware portion later. So now that everything's been assigned to the left and the right, no more clipping should occur. And if clipping does occur, it'll show you as you're mixing down the song. If you're exporting it as an MP3 file or whatever, it will alert you. It'll give a little error message. Hey, you just went over by 0.6 decibels or whatever the amount happens to be. And if that happens, you can go back and make some of these quieter if you need to. Let's say it was the music track that was clipping at some point. You could highlight this 0 and put like -5 and enter that in. And usually that fixes the problem. Since I'm not anticipating that happening, I'm just going to put it back at 0. And we should be good to go. And that's it as far as what you need to do to make your track more drummer friendly. So then to prepare to mix it down, you're going to want to put an endpoint to it. So you put your cursor wherever you want the track to end. I usually put it just after all the audio bars are done. And there should be an insert key on your keyboard. If there's not, then you can go to some edit options, and they'll give you a way to insert an endpoint. But we're just going to do insert button here. So there's our endpoint. And if you remember from the beginning, we set it to start 1 second in, so we got a little lead in time. So now our track should be ready to go. And the way that you want to put it into a format that you can use, I like to kind of slide back and make sure I can view the whole track, make sure everything looks good. You could, if you wanted to, you could put voiceovers at the end to let the drummer know the end is coming. I think the double clicks work much better. It's less distracting. You could also put voiceovers for any weird spots. Let's say you have a song that has a measure of 3/4 thrown in there randomly. You could always warn a drummer that a measure of 3 is coming, but they should know the song, so you shouldn't really need to do that. So once you're ready to mix this down, you go to Song, Export Mix Down, and then you get to decide what to name it, where you're going to send it. So for me, I always have a folder ready in an external hard drive where I can send final mixes. I'm going to make a new folder here because since this is for kind of learning purposes, I didn't prepare one ahead of time, but we'll say final practice mix. And we'll just say, let's select that as our folder. And you get to name it. I like to name my tracks in a way that I can identify everything about them right away. I know the name. It's going to be Queen of the Night. It's going to be, let's put the key first. We're going to go A. We're going to say it's 8 clicks. That way I know it's not a 4-click intro. It's going to be an 8-click intro. The tempo was 106.45 BPM. And also, if I'm making multiple backing tracks for somebody, I might put in an additional note saying with backing vocals or no backing vocals. In this case, I'm just going to leave it alone because we already know no backing vocals necessary for this band. So then you can pick down here what format you want to use. If you wanted a WAV file or AIFF or any of these various variations, you could do that. We're going to keep it MP3 so that it doesn't take much space. It takes slightly longer to mix down just because as it's bouncing the track, which is basically exporting it to the folder you choose, it's got to compress the file if it's MP3 format. WAV is very fast because it doesn't compress it. It leaves it at a large file size with a little bit better sound quality, but for the purposes of a 2-track mix, there's not going to be that big a difference. So you're going to be just fine doing an MP3. And I always have selected the export range as between selected markers, and I mark it start to number 2. And that means it's going to export from the start of the song here at the very, very beginning of the timeline, and it's going to stop exporting right where we put this marker at number 2. Now, some people have multiple markers they want to put throughout the song to separate verses and choruses and different sections of the song. So sometimes you might have 5 markers in there and the final one is number 6. And so then you would change this to start to 6 or whatever you felt was the best option. The one option they give you is number 2 through the end. Don't do that because then you're going to get like several minutes of blank space and it's just awkward. So we're going to keep the start to number 2 and click the OK button. And you can see it's bouncing your track to the folder of your choice. If there were clipping occurring, you'd get a little error message down here, which we don't see so far, so we should be in the clear. Then it'll pop up with your folder where you put it, and there is our backing track ready to use. You can put it on a laptop, a tablet. A really good method is, I prefer tablets. They're bigger, so that they're a little bit easier to use. iPod touches, whatever you need. Just you can use whatever device you want, and just load this track on there, and we will show you how to route the hardware appropriately in another video. So I'm going to close that up. I always like to make sure that I save things when I'm done with them. I never get rid of a file because I never know when I'm going to need it again, especially since I do so many backing tracks for so many different bands. Sometimes I can have the settings from a backing track I did for one band be so close to what another band needs that all I have to do is go into the old file, maybe go to the save as option and save it with a different name, and then make minimal changes and get done much faster. So anyway, it's a good idea to save all your files unless you're absolutely sure you don't need them again, which you're never going to be absolutely sure, so just save all your files. So that is how we use PreSonus to create a backing track a little bit more user-friendly, and I hope you've enjoyed yourselves because this was so much fun.